welcome. I'm so pumped. You guys. You have no idea what's about to go down. I've got Juan Es, Alzate with us, my homie, my Ista bro, who is phenomenal. Welcome, darling. It's so good to see you.
So good to be here, Ria.
Yeah. Let me give you guys a quick bio on Juan, and then we're going to dive into holding the shamanic point and just how sexy shamanism really is. So here's the 411 on Juan. Since 2008, Juan has been working with shamanism to affect healing, change in his life and the life of others. This work has taken Juan all around the world, working and training with shamans from China, Peru, Chile, Colombia, Brazil, and throughout the USA. Juan is trained and is experienced in psychic intuitive development, Reiki, Akashic records, yoga, Kung Fu, Tantra, transformational psychology, holotropic, and shamanic breathwork, to just name a few. He has been an incredible addition to the ISTA field and has been with ISTA for the last 4 years and is currently faculty. Yeah, that is so good. My balla and my gangsta.
Yeah.
Yes. Also, Juan, before we jump straight into like holding the shamanic point, you've been on this 13 and 14 month nomadic magical mystery tour. How's that landing for you? Where are you at?
Well, finally landed back in the States. Currently calling Austin my home for the next 6 months at least. So, finally got a mailing address and just kind of feeling more settled into life again.
Beautiful. It's so good. Isn't it amazing when you can go online and order a package and it actually arrives?
It is. I mean, you kind of, the last 3 months I was in Costa Rica in various Airbnbs, and that was not the case, especially this whole phenomena with Amazon Prime, I can finally get everything or anything I want directly to my house. Something you take for granted until you go to like a place like Costa Rica, where in the middle of a mountain, you just got to go to the grocery.
That's right. It's such a beautiful, beautiful experience to have the qualities of life that we often take for granted. And, this life as a ISTA facilitator, it really brings us all around the world. Mm-hmm. And it's a unique and beautiful and magical experience. So what's something you've really learned about yourself that's expanded you on your magical mystery tour?
I mean, it in of itself has been an expansive experience. But what I keep coming back to is this feeling of when you're on purpose, when I just kind of allow life to guide me and go to where it's taking me, it always provides. It's been right now, currently I'm going on 14 months since I left Chicago. And when I left, I just knew there was certain points I needed to be on certain dates with no real plan of like, what am I going to do? What is it going to look like? Where am I going to live? But I knew that each of these points are places I would like to live, or at least get the experience of life without knowing where. But letting go of the where and just knowing that this is what I'm here to do. What I really saw that expanded was a deeper trusting myself, trusting that when I know, yes, this is where I need to be, that whatever the where or the how or the what, they all kind of happen. They happen and they form around me versus trying to like mentally construct them and try to find security through planning, which is not a bad thing. But sometimes I know in my past, things that have limited me is like, oh, I don't have the plan, or I don't know where I'm supposed to go. How am I supposed to make that work? Now, what I really saw is like, I knew where I wanted to be, and I was going there on purpose to share my work, to develop myself, to really live the life I'm here to live. And in that space, trust and faith in like, okay, I know that I'm supposed to be here. And it really feels like it's been like 4 or 5 months that I've been on the road, because everything has worked out so well in spite of the challenges, right? In spite of not having a mailing address and switching homes sometimes weeks at a time, having to pack all of my shit. But just feeling like the sense of home was always with me. And as long as I am doing and living the life I came here to live, that there is a trust that things are provided, that the people and the experiences and the homes that I needed to be at came about. But it was more about taking the leap versus trying to figure out how the leap looks.
So well said. Yeah, that really resonates. You know, all the most important thresholds I've crossed have been this pull, this guide, this sense of taking a leap and trust. And it's not blind. It's not quite, you know, it's like we're putting words to something that most people can only, you know, get a whiff of, right? It's like a very, it's like describing a smell. It's very visceral and primal. And so we're putting words to something that is beyond just tangible or an ordinary reality, which really is a great, you know, segue into the topic of today is your magic, your medicine, and your gift. And I've witnessed it time and time again, because on your incredible 14-month nomadic journey, I've gotten to train with you. We've done 4 trainings together, and you are magical. And I've learned so much, and I've grown with you. And I had the honor to be in one of your first trainings and then be with you months later and see you grow exponentially. And it's like, wow, you know, it's really powerful. And so this magic and this gift and medicine that you carry with you is how you hold a point of shamanism, the shamanic point, and also how you weave it in so beautifully into Ista. And so I'd love to just hear, you know, what is it about shamanism? Like, what is this thing? And what is it for you, really?
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for seeing me. It has been such an amazing journey, and I wouldn't have had it any other way. I think you're fucking epic. You're a magnificent human being, and I also got a lot from our trainings, and you're so complimentary in so many ways. And on that topic of shamanism, for me, the path of shamanism really evolved over the last 13 years. So 13 years ago, I started the journey. And in many ways, as it relates to Ista, when it first happened to me, which was more through the Peruvian shamanic tradition, the thing that rings true both then and now is that ultimately it was about me. Like, I only got the medicine of shamanism when I decided that it was important to like work with myself, to like see myself, to go to the edge of where I was and really jump into the unknown of like, what can I be? What's in the way? And so what I find as far as the shamanic point is that as much as it is about me, it's also about the trust that there's something beyond me, that it isn't just me, that it isn't me creating everything, but that is myself co-creating with some greater force or energy or allies, and being able to develop that relationship. But ultimately that relationship is based, or the foundation is within myself. Like, how am I relating with myself? How am I talking to myself? What am I saying or not saying to myself? And developing the work of doing that deep healing work, of looking at my shadows, of going up to my edges and saying, I am worth more. Like, there's something here that maybe I haven't seen or tapped into that that is important to me. So it's this knowing that I can't keep going the way that I've been going, and now it's time for something to happen, something beyond what I know. And so I find that often that shamanic point at the most practical level, outside of tradition, is this self-initiation between myself, God, spirit, the universe, and really, being open to what is found there, like not having a preconception, not having expectations, but just like having a strong intention. And I would say that's one of the foundations of shamanism, is this intention piece, like getting clear on my intention, and letting that intention be like the arrow that pierces through the unknown.
Yes, it's really potent stuff. Just based on like different lighthearted like Instagram memes or social media in general, there's a lot of jargon, in pop psychology that goes around like getting to know yourself and trusting the universe. And, we're using language, but this is deep stuff. This is deep stuff, and it's often quite painful. It's very painful to explore and to question yourself, to look at your own psyche, to challenge yourself, to really put yourself under your own microscope, because you can't lie to yourself, right? We can try, but we can't really hide from ourselves. We unconsciously are honest with ourselves. Like, it's all there. And so this is a deep, deep, deep journey. And so I'm curious, what happened 13 years ago that was the pivotal point for you to really cross over this threshold into this exploration?
Yeah. So, often it's, at least in that point, and I call them my awakenings. I would say I'm on my third awakening, which just is a word I'm using for this moment that I crossed the threshold. And at that point, what was behind me was, I had created this good life, or at least a good life in that moment. I was an honors finance student at DePaul University. I had a relatively, probably the best relationship I ever had with a partner. I had a business in nightlife promotion. And so, on the outside, things were pretty and shiny. And, I worked hard to get to that point, and it felt good as a civilian in the human world. But there was this moment of like, where it was all starting to crumble. And, the relationship ended. I ended the business partnership. My relationship in school started to tank, and it was just all of these old feelings of not being good enough. Something is wrong with me came up like a fucking tsunami. And so it was in that dark night of the soul that, I just kind of like kneeled at God's feet and said, like, I thought I was doing everything I was supposed to do. Like, what am I supposed to do? Like, what do you want from me? And it was also this moment of like, I can't keep going on this way. Like this is completely falling apart. And if I stay here, it's just, going to be awful. and I knew that certain things needed to keep going. Like my relationship at school, like I was halfway through and I'm like, I need to finish this. It's not an option. At least I didn't see it as an option to completely let it all go. The relationships did end, but it was in the knowing that I needed to keep this ship afloat, but something had to radically change, that I was guided towards shamanism. And one of the key pieces there, I would say, is often, especially where I started with ayahuasca, was my first teacher on the shamanic path. What I was getting at that time is that it was very akin to the initiation of the warrior, like that in order to have this initiation, I had it to be ready for death, that I needed to let some aspect of myself die, and that if I died in the process, because it was unknown, like, you could take a little too much medicine and you're not coming back, that it was worth it, because I was not going to keep living the life I was living. So it was for me, that was a key piece of the shamanic initiation, was that I was ready to die, essentially. Like I knew that I couldn't keep going the way I was, and that it was important. It was so important to me to change that I was willing to face death. And so in that space is where the magic happened, like some deep clearing happened. And at the end of the journey, I would say, or at least in the end of that initial initiation, was this opening of my heart, like this reconnection to like how deep and huge the power of love is within me, and how much of this heart wanted to be here to serve, to like be a lighthouse of hope, of knowing that there is a way to get through your challenge, and you don't have to do it all alone, but you are the one that needs to do it. Like no one else was going to come and save me. I had to go fucking jump off, do it for myself. But in that place, the help, the support, the teachers, the activations, they occurred as I stayed on that path and have continued on that path. So I mean, that's the short of it.
It's so good. I can recall just listening to you, like all the moments in my life that were transformational was absolutely this life or death decision. And it's not so much life. It was more like, okay, do I choose death or do I choose to go back to sleep? And it sounds really harsh, but those were pivotal points that I got to in my life. And most people I know who have a deep practice beyond just the world of the ordinary, but have an extraordinary practice, especially in the ISTA field, is coming to this place of like, okay, do I choose to take the red pill or the blue pill? We all have those moments. Do I want to continue in, staying plugged into the matrix or whatever shiny, fancy life I've created for myself? Just like you said, it's spot on. Or am I willing to not say yes to just the status quo, to not just accept the ordinary, the mundane, even if I'm celebrated in it, even if it looks good on paper? And it's more than just the mind. Clearly, it's beyond that. It's like a soul calling, a heart calling. It's something more beyond us. That, at least the way I experienced it, was I was pulled into it. Like I didn't have a choice. Mm-hmm. I could have chosen to resist. I could have chosen to go back to sleep. I could have chosen to run away. I could have made other choices, but it definitely felt like I did not have a choice. And there was a path being created before me that I needed to walk. So yeah, that's super spot on. And so, for those of you listening right now, if your life is falling apart, then we fucking celebrate you. And we don't say that lightly. And I think we really do live in quite an interesting time, right? So whether it's a global pandemic, all the political things happening, the war, I mean, there's so much happening in our external forces right now that we're being confronted with. And so how does shamanism, what can that do for people? Like, what's the anchor that perhaps can be supportive for our listeners right now through the dark night of the soul?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely not ignoring it. Like when you were mentioning choosing between death or sleep, I would even say it was choosing between a death that would be excruciating and not fun, doing something that didn't feel good, or a death that I chose myself in the direction that felt worthwhile. And so it's, at the end of the day, the one thing that is guaranteed is death. Like every breath we take is welcoming death, because death will come. And so, I think with shamanism, what it brings to me and what I see it brings to people is it brings a level of sacredness to life where, okay, well, yeah, every breath is a sacrifice. Every breath I'm sacrificing. I'm either sacrificing it towards something that I don't care about or doesn't have any meaning, which then brings us to hopelessness, into a mundane, not that mundane life is bad, but like into a life without meaning just becomes like, being a character in a game that's not thinking, not feeling, versus actually living and feeling and like being excited about life and having a reason to live, right? I think shamanism brings the sacredness that says, all right, it's not just this solitary life where it's all me and poor me against the world, versus, I'm part of the world and the world is working with me. And there's hope and there's a way to change things that seem unchangeable if I just trust and if I work with myself first and foremost, but through myself with the universe, right? And so at the more like exponential level, or at the bigger picture, I think of shamanism, regardless of tradition, is that there is this component where you're not by yourself anymore, where even if there is, these crazy experiences we're having in the world, where if we just stay into ourselves as a solitary being disconnected from the world that everything is happening to like, I actually can create change through my own healing, that I can actually be a part of tipping the scales towards a brighter, more connected world where we are all working together, versus when I disconnect, stay safe on my couch, pretend that the world's problems are not mine, and live an apathetic life, that from there's no power, there's no transformation, there's no hope. We're just going to keep going in the direction we don't want to go. So I would say one of the places that I feel shamanism has really flourished in my life, and I see it really supporting the field, is that it brings that piece, that element of like, hey, you're not alone. There are forces here working with us. And as we engage with that field of consciousness, with that field of life, and we come from our hearts and we come to stand for love, that things will start to shift. Things do shift, and they shift in like a week. I mean, I love the container that we have. In a week, we all might have come in like, I don't know, in our own shit. And then by the end of the week, there's this huge opening where we all feel connected, where there's this deeper breath into hope, into love, into like, yes, we are creating the world and we're doing it together. And each of us individually is a piece and a part of the change. And I would say that's one place I feel shamanism anchors deeply into.
Yeah, so good. I learned this the hard way. And I mean, I was arrogant, right? And I think this happens to a lot of people, where we just think we know better. Maybe I'm like a rebellious teenager, or I see all the adults around me chaotic, and I'm like, y'all don't know what you're doing. But that arrogance, in a sense, kicked my ass and brought me to my knees. And only in that being on my knees, in that surrender, was I able to, like, this felt sense, access this bridge beyond who I think I am. And the disconnection and the isolation that I experience as I'm all alone in the world. This is my name, this is my birthday, this is my zodiac sign, all these finite personality, limiting, individualistic concepts, into exactly what you're talking about. And it's so cool to hear your words and to be able to have this visceral feeling and like know what you're talking about. And, I imagine it could be a leap for some people who haven't, touched it or felt it. And so it's engaging with the field of consciousness. Like, oof, woo, it's so good. And it's exactly right. It's opening the heart. Like, wow, the first time I did ayahuasca, it destroyed me. I did not respect the medicine. And it kicked my ass. And I respect the shit out of it now, right? I learned the hard way after being in such excruciating pain, but I had the choice. There was this moment where I surrendered to the pain. I said, all right, there's no way out of this. I can sit here and resist the pain and have this terrible, excruciating experience, or I could just surrender to the pain. And it took surrendering over and over and over again. It was every nanosecond, surrender, 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 surrender. It was such a state of consciousness. And like, it was extraordinary. It was like lifting 300 pounds, like building this muscle of surrender each nanosecond, each moment, because otherwise it was too painful. And then I learned how to honor and respect and bring in more sacredness that, I sadly hate to admit this, it's very embarrassing. I approached ayahuasca like it was a party drug. I'm like, hey, I've done ecstasy, I've done Molly, I've done other things. Like, yeah, no worries, I could totally do this. No, it was no bueno, no good. But I'm so grateful for that experience, for that pain, for that surrender. And it was the universe taking a 2x4 and just hitting me over the head to break me out of this egoic, arrogant, personality, just BS. But until I had that experience, I didn't even know, because that was the mask that I thought of who I was, and just moving through the world that way. And slowly, as my life fell apart as well around me, there's no greater teacher than pain.
Yeah.
There's no greater teacher than getting your ass whooped and getting it kicked. And in that despair, at the bottom of my dark night of my soul, in my despair, was this light, was this gold of recognizing sovereignty and recognizing, wow, I'm just a product of all this programming. It's not who I am. It's not my being. And it's always such a strange thing when I hear when someone's like, just be yourself, right? Like, what the fuck? That's like so hard. It's like, what do you mean just be myself? Like, who am I? Right. Mm-hmm. And I think the best way I can describe it is it's those couple of seconds in the morning when you first wake up, where you're still kind of half asleep and you're just coming back. There's like a couple of seconds of peace and bliss where I feel most myself. I'm like, oh, this is me. Cool. And then as I, get up and have my coffee and move around and start engaging with the world, then my personality comes on more thick. It's like layered on. But I know, and I remember the felt sense of my soul behind this mask. And the mask is important. I need it to move through the world, to engage with the world. Otherwise, I couldn't function in such a tender, vulnerable state all the time. So I'm grateful for that. And I think it's more about how to integrate, to recognize what the mask is and to allow the mask to be as updated and as clean or hygienic as possible with the soul. And I think this practice is the shamanic point, right? To allow my inner, you said it so beautifully when we were chatting about today's episode of the priest and the priestess and the priestess, right? The gender non-binary priestess. Yeah. And it's next level shit. Mm-hmm. Ain't gonna lie, it is next level shit.
Yeah. Next level. It's funny because we use the word next level, and it is for most of us in the way that we've been living. And yet, by the same token, it's like, this is actually who you are. This is who you are, And so it's next level as a practice, but it's actually very ordinary and regular of what we are in totality, Like, I love the piece when you were talking about the sacredness, and with shamanism. For me, it gave some verbiage or some understanding of what is the sacredness, and for me, as shamanism has come through, in particular, this understanding of the earth as our mother, as a being that is part of this co-creation, and the sun as the father of what it means to be a human on this plane as a physical human, And so to have the context that, all right, yes, I think I'm by myself, but I didn't make this body. This body is 100% the earth, and it's on a short-term lease until it expires and it goes back to the owner, which is the earth. And this life, like the aliveness that's happening here, the energy that is being created here in many ways is sourced from the center of the system, which is the sun. And so once we move into that sacredness that I would say shamanism makes available or allows us to put our mind around, to give words to give recognition to, then there's a sense of interconnectedness, and that piece around the light, like right when you get through all of this shit and you find that light, that was deep experience for me when I started this work, and has continued, and for me, what I called it, because what I've been doing the majority of this time was the shamanic path, I just decided to name it, or it named itself through me, the luminous healer. And so a lot of my practice was around, let's find the luminous healer. Like once you can find that light within you, where the truth is at, where the magic and the miracles and the precepts lives, then you find that power that allows you to co-create with that field of consciousness, with the universe around us. So I love it. I love it.
Yes. It's so good. And I really love what you said earlier too, about how you don't have to do it alone, but it does take you first, right? It takes you first saying, all right, what in the world is this thing called life? I'm at a crossroads, and it's like, okay, which direction, where do I go? But I have to say yes first. I have to take that leap of faith. I have to take that step forward. And that's when the teachers arrive. Mm-hmm. That's when, the things part. And, I definitely want to bring in that it's layered, it's complicated, right? It's not, we're not simplifying this thing where it's like, all right, just trust the universe and the path will be presented to you. No, it's fucking hard. This is challenging. And there are some of us, human bodies that are leased from the earth that are faced with more challenges than others. I definitely think there's like a systemic, socioeconomic, there's definitely a three-dimensional reality that can be quite challenging, right? And there's this gap between our physical three-dimensional earthling selves and the luminous healer inside, but it's such it's definitely a case by case, person to person experience. And yet there's such commonality, right? Like the things you're talking about right now, Juan, have been talked about and wrestled with like for centuries in sacred texts and scriptures and books. And so, we live in a diverse world, and I'm just really grateful that we have, some technologies now that can help break us out of the prison of who we think we are to who we actually are. Yeah.
And like, it's funny, is that piece around the challenge, the crossroads, like to me, that is often the threshold. I mean, from most of my initiations or awakenings, it was this threshold moment where something needed to change, where, I needed to get some clarity, or something needed to die, or I really needed to face myself. And, bringing it to shamanism, like, one of my teachers used to call it, or I remember it being named as like, to become a shaman, or the path of shamanism is the path of the wounded healer. And it is through our attention to our, wounds, our emotional, energetic, whatever, wherever they exist, the challenges in our life, that as we face them fully and learn to work with them, to heal them, to get in harmony with the challenge, that we then receive the medicine, we receive the elixir that allows us not only to live a better life, to be more connected, but also that elixir is then the thing that we could bring back to our community, which I believe brings the full scope of shamanism, which is, it's not just about me doing my personal work so I can be the best Juan possible, but that in creating and in supporting myself to be as great and amazing and healthy and harmonious and good as possible, that then I can give that gift to others who are at similar thresholds, you know? And so for me, it looked like becoming a shaman and working with people in that way. For others, it could be becoming an artist or finding the new, you know, platform that connects people. And it doesn't even have to be that like this big audacious dream. It could be like being a better mom, you know, being a better father, being a better neighbor that like really cares about the neighborhood, you know. And so the shamanic path at a beyond any dogma is, you know, the path of wholeness and self-realization, where you are right with yourself, and now because you're full, you can now give and give from your heart in a way that supports the environment around you. So it's also this piece around how do I live in a way that supports me, but that also brings harmony to the environment around me, my relation, all of my relations might have been heard, you know. In the North American tradition, they talk about all of my relations. So it's about really, how do I come into harmony with all of my relations? And one thing that shamanism really brought to me to the forefront is that everything is relationships. You know, like the way I relate to my computer or to my phone or to my mom or to my partner or to my friends, like that all has a reverberation in the field that's either creating heaven in my life or it's creating hell, you know. And so that the, you know, the deeper or, you know, practical level of shamanism is like, I want to be good with myself so that I could then be a gift to the world around me and contribute to creating heaven on earth.
Woo! Spitting fire. Yes, the sacred wounds. The sacred wounds. Yeah, the more expansion I experience, the more I learn, the more I grow. I can also feel, you know, like my evolution, my ego or my smaller self or my stuckness or my wounds, right? Like where I hold pain, where I'm still licking my wounds, where I'm not completely healed, is right beneath it. There's this fallacy, this concept that, you know, the more I grow, the more enlightened I become, like the bigger the gap will be. And it's as if this plateau that I'll never feel pain again. But instead it's what's my relationship to pain? And how can I perhaps slow down? And because you know, what I've learned also is when I go too fast, I end up going into my default, and the grooves that I've already created, the wounds and the pain, create these kind of grooves in my psyche or my soul or my behavior, my mannerisms. And if I go too fast, if I move too quickly, then I fall back onto the old tracks. And so this process of creating new grooves, to pivot, to grow, to expand, to take the leap into the mystery, into the unknown, is to slow down and to recognize, you know, my baggage is still with me. Like I can't escape myself, no matter how much nomadic lifestyle I'm living and traveling to the other side of the globe. I'm still me. I'm still bringing me and all my shit and all my baggage with me. So how can I then turn inward while I'm still connected with the world and facing the world to create right relation? And it's, yes, it's very, very powerful what you're speaking about. And I love what you said, being a good neighbor, being a good mother. I mean, that's like psychotherapy 101, right? Like all my issues come from parenting and how I was raised. And like, wow, being a good mother, that can literally change generations. That is generational healing. And so I love this, the shamanic point, the shamanic perspective, the shamanic lens of seeing yourself as an empowered sovereign being, connected to what's not just around you horizontally, but what's around you vertically, the generations before you that you can heal, and the blessings you can provide to the ones that are coming.
Mm, mm.
Mm.
Oh,
Oh yeah.
beautiful.
So good. It's so good. Yes. And I really like this that we're borrowing these bodies from the earth, releasing it from the earth. It's temporary, and to take care of it, and what's my attachment to it. And as you were sharing this, what came to me is I'm a huge Star Trek fan. I'm a Trekkie, and it is such a shamanic show. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's quite visionary. It's like, what would human beings do if all of our basic needs were met? There's no more poverty. We're not hungry. We're sheltered. We've got clothes. Like, all of the survival is met. Then what? And this concept of like, hey, what if we explored the galaxy, explored the universe? We created space travel, and we started connecting with other species, and to recognize just how interconnected we really are. That the sun is not, it's not our sun. We share it with other planets, with other systems. And, some galaxies or some systems have more than one sun. I mean, we're neighbors, right? So even this earth is just an island floating in this space. And there's a sense of awe that can be felt when we start to zoom out in wide angle lens. And even when we focus, when we bring back the lens and we go inward, there's a whole universe inside. Whole universe inside that can really be like a point of inspiration, right? Where I don't know how it works. I really, like, logically or verbagely, I can't really quite put my finger on it. But the more I say yes to exploring my own inner psyche, the more permission is given in the field around me, and my family members, my beloveds, my coworkers, my colleagues. And it's next level, or it's just deep shit.
Deep, so deep. Yeah. I mean, I would say that's what shamanism gave me, is this way to go deep, both vertically, horizontally, inwardly and outwardly. And it was like, the perspective that, like, the minerals in my bones, the air in my lungs, the water in my blood, all of that, it doesn't even belong to me. Like, we have all these fights about what belongs to who, and it's like, did you create it? No. And when you're able to then start to build a relationship with the earth directly, with the soul of the earth, with the energy of the earth that is a living being, and like start to get direct messages from it, or start to work with it to be in better relationship with it and the world around you, like, it just opens up this whole Pandora's box of the deep shit that is like, oh wait, but that's how our ancestors lived, that they lived in a deep relationship with earth. They understood the seasons. They understood what it meant. They could feel rain coming. They knew when there was a shift in the field. Like, right now we're in such a focused place that's disconnected, or for some of us could be very disconnected in the mainstream, where we're outside focused, versus what I'd say the shamanic point offers us is to come back in, and from within then feel everything outside of us, and be in what we call right relationship with it, right? And so to me, a lot of the healing in shamanism comes from dealing with whatever is in the way of creating a right relationship with all of my relations, whether that's my love life, or my business, or my friends, or even myself. Obviously, actually, it always ends up with me, but to have that verbiage and to start to develop the relationships with the sun, like, one experience I had halfway on that journey that really, like, well, I've had several, but this one comes up because you mentioned the sun, and she just came in, was a lot of the work in the beginning was deep with the earth. You know, Aya was first, grandmother Aya. She took me straight to the core of the earth. And, you know, I like to say, and my experience of it has been that the earth was my first teacher, like the one that like woke me up, that awoke that luminous healer, that priestess within me to like, oh, wow, there's more. I remember who I am. I know how I'm here to serve. And so a lot of my focus went there in the beginning of my practice, was like working with her, you know, bringing that work forward. And I think there is a series of, we call it natural hierarchy. Like, you know, like obviously it starts with me because I'm the closest thing to me. But ultimately, within the context of this world as a 3D being, it goes then to the earth because we're directly interacting with this operating software here. Like she's the computer that we're on top of And so working with her a lot was my focus. And, you know, in the shamanic practice I do, we honor all of the forces of nature that compose existence. And so I would go through the directions and I was developing relationships with all of them, but it was always like, oh, the earth, that's my home girl. That's my mama. I'm here to serve her. And you know, there was this moment in my new office at the time. This was maybe 6 years ago. I was at my new office. You know, I was having groups of like, you know, 30 people packed into a room doing ceremony every moon. And there was one day that I remember vividly. I was in my office just hanging out at my table, and the sun was coming in because we had like sunlight, like a ceiling window, and the sun just shone on me, shined it upon me. And I'm just sitting there feeling its energy and kind of going into that moment, like when you were saying, when you wake up, like you just like everything disappears and you're just like, oh, this is who I am, right? Like just that moment of like peace and stillness. And in that stillness, I hear this big laughter, this big belly laugh, like, I'm like, what? And it was, the sun was laughing at me, but in like a loving father kind of way, like not poking at me critical, but like, oh, you silly kid, you know, I'm so happy you're doing this work. And I love the attention you've given to the earth. It's important. And I just want to set the record straight. Like, if you think that the power resides in the earth, who do you, before she even feels anything, I've already felt it. You know, like that it was the pulse of life in this solar system. And the image it gave me was like, I saw him, or it's the being that is the sun, as like a Rasta, right, with dreads. And each dread was one of the planets. So it's like the nervous system coming out. And it was just this sense of like putting this record straight, like, hey, actually, if you're really looking to see what's the power that's animating everything, like orient yourself to where it's at least here. And it just brought this new reverence, like, oh, I see you, thank you, you know. And it was like, you know, in reality, like everything is happening in the sun first before it happens in its extensions, which are the earth, and then by relationship, everything that's on the earth. And it was just like, you know, just little moments like that, that to me, shamanism has been like this elixir that just like keeps opening and deepening relationship and letting me know, like, what's my place in this? Like, I might think I'm the most important thing on the planet, and you know, maybe not so much.
Woo! So good, darling.
Mm-hmm.
Clearly we can talk about this forever. And we're coming up on the hour here. So I'd love to jump into some quick fire questions, because I think that was a mic drop. I mean, you know, you nailed it. It's really profound and deep stuff. Yeah. So thank you for sharing that. I can really feel your heart. I can feel your passion for this, and such a creative, humbling way to honor what animates life. That's right. Awesome. So what's, the more personal, the more universal. So we want to get a real felt sense of Juan Es. So the quick fire questions is in just a few words, 3 words or less. I won't hold it to you, do what you do. But in just a few words, what does freedom mean to you?
To be fully myself.
What did you eat for dinner last night?
I ate kale, sweet potatoes, and leftover vegetables.
Yum. If you were a piece of furniture, what would you be?
A California king size bed.
Meow, meow. Which hand do you use to brush your teeth, and where in your mouth do you start first?
I use my right hand and I start in the front, top teeth.
Nice. What's something you've failed at?
Anything that I've been great at.
Ha! Good one. That's right. What are you reading right now?
I'm reading Call of the Wild, which is not the classic literature, but it's like a somatic healing book. Pretty awesome.
Awesome. If you could wake up tomorrow and magically have gained a new skill or ability, what would it be?
To bring harmony everywhere I go and beyond.
Beautiful. Last but not least, if you can go back in time, what advice would you give to your younger self?
Do it sooner, do it faster. Stop fucking around.
Nice. All right. You heard it here first. Stop fucking around. Dark night of the soul. Just get on your knees and get in touch, with your shamanic self. It's been such an absolute pleasure. I love you so, so, so dearly. You are such a dear, dear, dear bro. And yeah, thank you for being here with me.
Thank you for having me, Ria. It's been such a pleasure to be here with you.
Love you. And if you want to find Juan Es, how can people find you?
LuminousHealer.com, luminous_healer at Instagram, or Luminous Healer Shamanic Living on Facebook.
Boom.
Bam.